Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today we're going to be looking at Holo Taco's new camping collection. This is a 7-piece non-limited edition lineup that's also launching alongside a brand new base coat as well as a new s'mores scented cuticle oil. And to be clear, that is the only thing that is limited edition. But yeah, we have a couple of different finishes with this collection ranging from micro flakies, shimmers, a couple of magnetics, a new crelly, and of course a new topper. So as always, I will save some more thoughts for the end after comparisons. For now, let's get into the swatches. So first, let's start with the sticky base coat, which is what I'm going to be using underneath all my swatches. Even though it has this very orange tint in the bottle, it does apply clear, and their sticky base coat is formulated to dry down with a little bit of tack just to make the polish adhere better. Now for the collection swatches, the first polish we have is Stop Buggin, which is a bright green metallic with smooth, shiny microflakes. So I believe this is the third polish we've seen in this finish, but the first that is permanent in their catalog. As you saw, the first coat provided really great coverage. It's not fully opaque, but you do see a few tiny bald spots that are going to be easily covered up with a second coat. This polish is incredibly packed with those tiny microflakies to the point that you don't need to sponge it on for full opacity. The second green in the collection is called Feral Forest, and it's described as a blackened, cool forest green, semi-translucent, buildable crelly. A crelly polish, if you don't know, is kind of the in-between of a cream and a jelly. So as you can see on the first coat, it is not fully opaque as a traditional Holo Taco cream polish. There is a little bit of translucency, which adds to a squishy kind of feeling, except since this polish is so dark, I feel like on two coats it just looks fully opaque like a cream. That being said, the color is really beautiful. I feel like it was picking up a little too dark here, so I adjusted the exposure to show you what it really looks like. It's a beautiful blue toned green. Up next we have Boom Toasted, which is described as a pale gold crystal jelly with green to gold to orange shifting iridescent shimmer and a scattered hollow glitter. So I know we've gotten a few of these crystal jelly finishes from Holo Taco before. I believe their most recent was Wanderlust from the anniversary collection. So as the name suggests, it is a jelly base, meaning it is going to be very translucent, but especially so with this lighter yellow kind of color. But it is absolutely packed with those shimmer particles, so I feel like once you are under direct kind of lighting, at least underneath the desk, it is pretty distracting from visible nail line, but as soon as you move your nails around, you definitely can still see through it. So even doing a third coat doesn't really obscure it that much. This polish is not going to be fully opaque by any means unless you use a blurring base coat. It was hard to capture on camera, but it does shift to a lime green too. Getting into the magnetics, the first one we have is Off the Grid, and it's described as having an indigo blue base, a cyan shimmer, and an amber mauve magnetic pull. This one had a beautiful formula. It's a little bit on the jelly side, but definitely very, very pigmented. It was also really even coverage on the first coat, but I got it fully opaque in two. And yeah, I would say this is my favorite from the collection. I love the indigo base color. I wouldn't agree with calling that cyan sparkle a shimmer. I personally would call it more of a micro flaky just because it's a little bit larger and more sparse, but either way it's still a beautiful detail. And I also really love the color of the magnetic shimmer going from that beautiful rosy pink to copper in extreme light. And as usual, here it is unmagnetized next to the velvet effect using the horseshoe magnet. And the other magnetic is Feeling Sparks, which is a deep red base filled with an orange to red iridescent flaky and a gold to copper magnetic pull. The formula on this was very similar to the last polish, but I would say this was even more of a jelly base. Hopefully you can see just by how sheer it is, where you can see some more visible nail line with this polish. And even doing a second coat, while it does obscure the visible nail line, it does still give this really squishy jelly kind of look, but at the same time, I still found it very pigmented and full coverage to the point that I just stopped it at 2 coats. I think you could do a 3rd coat if you really want to make it 100% fully opaque, but as usual, that just comes down to personal preference. So here I wanted to show off the shift to this brighter minty green, which I thought was interesting. And here it is in 2 coats on its own and next to the velvet effect. I did see a lot of people describing the shade as brown, but it definitely is red. The next polish is Nature Calls, and this is described as a dark muted navy jelly with a pale yellow to pink iridescent shimmer and blue to green iridescent flakies. This one had another beautiful formula that was incredibly smooth to apply, very even coverage as well. It looked great on the 1st coat, just a tiny bit sheer, but fully opaque for me in 2 coats. So while this polish had an amazing formula, I don't know why, but I just didn't love it on me. I don't know if it's the shade of the blue base, which is interesting since I do normally love navy blues. Maybe this one is just too muted for me or something, but I did really like how the gold shimmer shifts to a brighter green in more extreme lighting. And rounding out the collection, we have Shooting Star Taco, which is a clear base filled with silver holographic star-shaped glitters as well as a silver scattered holo. So for the first application here, I just wanted to apply it as is, not shaking it up too much or putting it upside down, just to see what would come out. I even had to dip back in to get the 1 star on my nail, but as expected, the scattered holo was very even coverage at least, so swirling around and doing a little bit more fishing definitely gets more stars on the nail. But as usual with any kind of chunky glitter topper, I would recommend having the bottle upside down for at least a minute or 2 just to get the stars out a lot easier. And here's a closer look at the new S'mores scented cuticle oil. It's the same packaging, just with a different label and scent, obviously. I unfortunately don't have the official description or scent notes for this, but to me it smells like marshmallow, a little bit of graham cracker, and I'm assuming some notes of chocolate. I obviously don't have the sharpest nose, but I will say that marshmallow is usually one of those scents that will make me gag and give me a headache, so I was a little nervous about this. Thankfully though, I didn't find it to be super strong or sickly sweet. It just had a really nice mellow marshmallow scent, if that makes sense. I'm assuming because it's just balanced well with the other scents, so I was pleasantly surprised because again, while I do love marshmallows and s'mores in real life, the fake marshmallow is a little too much, but this was yummy. And here's a collage of my thumb swatches. I'm so sorry I did not have time to do full hand swatches for these. If you don't follow me on Instagram, I only just got this collection on Wednesday. So yeah, apologies for not being able to show these in natural lighting. My best guess is that the shades Feral Forest and Off the Grid are going to be dark enough that they are pretty much going to look black, especially in lower lighting. Also, as a side note, I feel like the shades Boom Toasted and Stop Buggin would be so perfect for Christmas time. Moving on to comparisons, we're starting with Stop Buggin and looking at it next to Everything is Pine, which was the green holiday micro glitter. So obviously that is holographic, it's a totally different finish, but color-wise, I feel like these are very, very close. Adding a layer of rainbow snow will probably make them look like dupes. The only other green micro flakies that I have in my collection are ILNP's Paradise and Mooncat's Tectonic Shift. Paradise is more of a jelly base with a more sparse metallic flaky, and the shade of green is also darker and a little bit more blue toned, while Tectonic Shift is a much lighter, more sheer jade color with a pink micro shimmer flaky. Then for Feral Forest, of course, we're looking at it next to Headhunter, which is the dark green cream from last year. This shot is a little overexposed, but it's more color accurate here side by side on the nail, so hopefully you can see the color difference where Headhunter is a little bit more yellow leaning. And again, that one is a true cream, but like I mentioned, I feel like Feral Forest also looks like a cream. Some other shades that I thought were closer were Loud Lacquer's Office in the Trees, which is a deep emerald green cream, and a new upcoming shade from Cracked Polish called Teal Dark and Handsome, which hopefully you can tell is more of a true teal color, so it's noticeably more blue than the other two, but I would say that Loud is definitely the closest to being a dupe. Next for Boom Toasted, I thought some of the closer shades were Holo Taco's Bottle Service, which is a slightly deeper goldenrod metallic kind of shimmer formula. So it's a lot more opaque, a little bit more amber in color. So I thought maybe the closer color was Coin Toss from the Pixel Perfect collection, since that's a lighter, softer shade of gold. But that one's obviously a holographic glitter, so they just don't compare. Since Boom Toasted was on the sheer side being that jelly base, I figured I could also show it next to Halogen Glow, which is a topper, so that one has a much more clear base. So I'm showing these both in 1 and 2 coats just to show you the difference in coverage. I guess you could layer Boom Toasted as a topper since it is pretty sheer on that first coat, but again, it's more densely packed with those shimmer particles, so it's more buildable overall. I figured I could also show this next to Mooncat's Demeter's Harvest, which was recently retired. That one is another sheer yellow kind of shimmery polish, but that one is actually even more full coverage. Like, don't get me wrong, it's still sheer, but it just has a little bit more opacity than Boom Toasted does, but the main obvious difference is the color. And here it is next to Starlily's Flicker from the Liminal Dreams collection. That one has a little bit more of a similar formula to Demeter's Harvest, for example, where it's just a little bit more full coverage or opaque compared to Holo Taco. And again, the color is slightly off, where it's just a warmer caramel undertone with a green shimmer. Next for Off the Grid, I wanted to show this next to Cool Cat Mom, which is another magnetic from Holo Taco, but that one's a little bit more of a brighter blue with like a pink magnetic shimmer. When I first saw Off the Grid, I actually was immediately reminded of Existential Crisis, where they just made the magnetic version of that one. So I'm showing it unmagnetized here just so you can see how similar they look, where they do have the same reddish kind of shimmer, but the base in Existential Crisis is a little bit more of a teal color as opposed to indigo, so it's not as purple. And Existential Crisis also has this hollow glitter as opposed to the blue aqua kind of shimmer in Off the Grid. And since it's described as being an indigo base, I figured I could also show it next to Midnight Owl, which is the indigo holographic glitter from a few holidays ago. That one also has these iridescent flakies in there, so if you are wearing Off the Grid unmagnetized, it is going to have a lot of that red shimmer, but if you do magnetize it, I feel like the base kind of looks like Midnight Owl. So if you happen to have a red magnetic topper, you can probably recreate Off the Grid. I did see a request to show Off the Grid next to Precious Cargo from the Gone Too Soon Bon Voyage collection. Precious Cargo is a dark, cool brown linear hollow base with a pinky red kind of shimmer, so even if you do wear Off the Grid unmagnetized, I feel like you can definitely tell a difference. And the last comparison I have for Off the Grid is with ILNP's Hypnosis from their Illusions collection earlier this summer. They technically have a very similar color scheme where they both have purple bases, but Hypnosis is a bit lighter, but the obvious difference is the colors of the background shimmer and the magnetic shimmer are swapped. Moving on to Feeling Sparks, I was immediately reminded of ILNP's Poison, but that one is a more monochromatic red magnetic, so it has a bit of a deeper red base with a red magnetic shimmer and a dainty hollow sparkle in the background, so I wouldn't call these dupes. And here it is next to Mooncat's Your Heart's a Black Hole and Reclaim the Flame, which was from the Hocus Pocus 2 collaboration several years ago. That one is a little bit more similar than Black Hole because it has these additional iridescent flakies in the background, but it's overall a little bit more of a pinky red coloring than Feeling Sparks. I would say that the flakies in Mooncat are also a bit smaller in size too. I also saw some requests to see Feeling Sparks next to Mooncat's Scum and Villainy, since again, a lot of people thought Feeling Sparks was going to be brown, so hopefully you can see just how red it is next to Scum and Villainy. The magnetic pigment is a little bit closer, but it's more coppery rose gold instead of yellow. And lastly, for Feeling Sparks, I wanted to show this next to I'm Rover It and Orbite Me. Even though those two are not magnetic polishes, I just thought color-wise, they might be the most similar to Feeling Sparks. I'm Rover It is more of a burnt orangey, red, metallic kind of shimmer, while Orbite Me is a deep oxblood kind of crushed hollow. So color-wise, Feeling Sparks is kind of in between these two. Next, for Nature Calls, I really didn't have anything like this in my collection, so I figured I could show it next to Wanderlust from the Bon Voyage collection, which is a blue base with a golden yellow kind of micro shimmer. The shimmer is definitely a lot stronger in Wanderlust, and the base is a bit lighter, but I feel like in certain angles it can look a little bit deeper, but they're definitely not dupes. And for color reference, here it is next to ILNP's Jumping Puddles, which recently launched. That one's a bit of a lighter mid-tone blue with larger flakies. So I thought ILNP's Starlight might be a little bit closer, being a darker muted gray blue, but that one's still too light. And lastly, for Shooting Star Taco, I have two other star-shaped glitter toppers to share. The first that I picked out was Cirque's Hex Girl, which has star shapes, but also moons and larger hex glitters, as well as a very fine hollow dusting. And on the right is Fauve's Stargazing, which should be coming out next weekend, but that one has stars, moons, a hollow dusting, and a super tiny blue iridescent microflake. So I'm wearing one coat of each over black so you can see the holographic sparkle in all of them and the density of the hollow dusting. I would say that Cirque is the most base heavy, so it required more fishing. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons for Holo Taco's new camping collection. As always, I would love to know your thoughts on this release because I thought it was nice. I definitely love the theme and think it's so perfect as we approach fall, but I don't think I love the execution of these, or I don't know, there's something about the color palette that just doesn't really excite or inspire me too much. So this is definitely not my favorite collection that Holo Taco has put out, but I don't think it's bad by any means. It's just, you know, a personal preference thing. I think I would have preferred them if the colors for some of these were like slightly tweaked, but I do think that these will pair really well with some of my other fall favorites from Holo Taco. I definitely would say that the magnetics and the topper are my favorites from the collection, and I'm pretty sure most people would feel the same. Although I do know that a lot of people also feel a little wary about their magnetics just because they didn't have the best formula when they first came out with them. That was never my experience, so I always had like a pretty good experience with Holo Taco magnetics, but I definitely can see how they are weaker compared to other brands. But I do think these two new ones are some of the best ones that they have come out with. They've just magnetized really easily, but if you do still feel on the fence about them and you only want to pick up one, I would say go with Feeling Sparks just because that one has the more jelly base, which lets the magnetic pigment move around a lot easier. Also, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I feel like the Crelly was the weakest one for me out of this lineup, mainly because I feel like once a Crelly is just so dark, at that point, it just kind of looks like a cream. You lose all the squishiness that Acrylic offers. It's pretty much how I felt about Devil's Advocate, where similar to that shade, it just didn't have a great self-leveling formula, so it's not something that you could wear in one coat if you wanted that squishy, crelly feel. And building it up in two coats, it just kind of looks like a cream at that point. So, you know, I'm not the biggest fan of the darker color crellies that they're doing. So I know this is gonna be even more unpopular to say, but I don't think I would have been mad if they gave us a plain white crelly in this collection, because I feel like it just would have fit so well. One, because the lighter color is going to add to that squishy, crelly feel, but it's also like a marshmallow, so it would have worked perfectly in my opinion. But I do know, obviously, that everybody and their mother was so upset over Holo Taco releasing, I think it was like 5 or 6 white crelly kind of polishes last year. I do get it, but I'm just saying, if they hadn't released so many last year, I feel like this collection would have been the perfect one to introduce a plain white Crelly. But yeah, overall, these were nice shades, so I would love to know what you think of them, if you already picked them up, or if you're gonna be waiting until Black Friday, or if you're not even interested in them at all. Maybe this color palette doesn't speak to you, so either way, I would love to know your thoughts down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!